Did we just get two sprint races in one weekend? Was Danny going to do a Monza 2.0? Is Perez trying to challenge the universe into a late-breaking silly season? Welcome to Tinfoil Helmets, your occasional spicy hot take roundup of the latest F1 rumors, all with the almost believable conspiracy theories to back them up. Everything here has been carefully researched for hours to make sure it's totally founded in logic, reasoning, and truth. Or not, who knows. Alright, did we get anything right with Mexico? Let's go right into it.
Perez absolutely bins it in practice. No. Fails to make it to Q2. No, but it was pretty tight. And gets taken out before the halfway point in the race. Correct.
You could have said he got taken out before the halfway point in lap 1 and you would have been correct.
Indeed, I will award myself half a point for that, which is more than Perez scored.
We'll definitely talk more about that later. Let's not go into that now. Also, prediction that the Merc would be broken in Mexico.
It was half broken because only one of the drivers could extract the required performance out of it.
Well, that's really been the trend for the last couple of weeks with that Merc.
Indeed, and I think that there's something in that. But yeah, I don't think we got any points for this one because it kind of seemed to be doing okay.
So I actually watched almost the full pre-race broadcast coverage because I thought the race started at noon and not 1. So I watched a lot of the pre-coverage, and there was a moment before the race where Lewis was sitting there with standing next to George, and he had his headphones on, and he was just kind of vibing to whatever music he was listening to. And then there was George, and he had his sunglasses on, and then there was George, no headphones, no sunglasses, just sitting in the grass besides Lewis, and he's like, how the hell am I gonna go as fast as this guy today? It seemed like Lewis was just it's the TikTok or something of the singing California Girls and driving through a grid really fast or something. It's that seemed like what Lewis was going to do, and George was having flashbacks to every crash he's ever caused.
He's never caused any crashes. He's never caused a crash. Never.
Oh, that's right. All the crashes he's been involved with that totally weren't his fault.
There we go.
And then we also had another prediction that the McLaren might be even worse. Macca did not hold up that well this weekend.
No, but I will say that Lando, once he got going, he screwed up his qualifying and he screwed up his race. But it actually had legs. It was going somewhere. So I don't think it was as bad as maybe it looked.
And his second start.
Indeed.
All right. Well, shall we move on with from our predictions?
Yes, let's go for our drama that happened between races.
Almost technically more between podcasts at this point in time because Lewis and Charles got DQ'd in Austin after we recorded that episode.
Indeed, I had to do some quick fix up there to make sure that the podcast clarified why we were talking about things in a way that was not real. But yeah, they got DQ'd for a plank violation, which is first time in 20 years, I think it was.
And they only measured 2 cars, or they only measured 4 cars, and 2 of the cars they measured got DQ'd. Interesting, they did measure Max. Max was fine, and apparently the reason why we haven't seen the Red Bull running away so much recently is because they did notice that they've been sacrificing some performance to save the plank because they realized they were seeing some excessive wear on their plank, and they've been running a little bit higher, while I think some of those cars that are trying to be more competitive are pushing it a little close to the edge.
I thought that was actually really interesting. I thought it was interesting that they said that that's what they'd done in Singapore, and Austin was equally bouncy, and they realized they were in trouble, and so they decided to save it. Worked out well for them because the car's still like a rocket ship, but I thought that was very interesting. I really wish they'd done Carlos's car just because he was so close to them. I just would have been very curious to see whether that one had the same problem.
Yeah, I think from a statistical standpoint of when you measure 4 cars and 50% of them are under the limit, you should maybe consider measuring some more cars.
Did you see the follow-up statement that it turns out this was not a random selection? These cars were intentionally chosen.
Oh yeah, because they have the bouncy sensors, and these were the most bouncies of the cars.
Indeed. I'm not sure what that says about Charles and whether he's fatter than Sainz, so he makes the car bounce more. It's unclear. But I thought that was pretty interesting, that they were not randomly selected.
So if I just have my car always planted on the ground, which would be very good for ground effect, it won't trigger the bouncy sensors, and I can excessively wear my plank.
There you go. You see, now you're thinking like an F1 team principal.
Fantastic. Checo's dad had the best comment of Checo will be Max's teammate for the next 10 years.
Which I love because it was so clearly wrong on a number of different levels. Like, putting aside the performance of Checo, which we will come to later, like we do every week, we should have Checo's Corner. I can't believe Checo's going to be in F1 in 10 years' time, right? He's not a spring chicken. He's not like he's Piastri and he's got a whole lot left, right? In 10 years' time, I think he'd be older than Alonso, if I'm correct. Which I just don't see him going that long. It just doesn't seem like, irrespective of his performance, I just don't see him doing that.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if he doesn't make it out of like this year. But we'll get on to that. Yeah, that was just. And then also, like, Max has already kind of stated after like 2028 he might not do anything. So like, you could say 5 years and that might, or 6 years and that might not even be true. Just because, yeah, Max seems like, yeah. All right, that is Daddy Perez's plan. Is he just needs to have Perez hold on until Max is gone, and then Perez can shine brightly in the best car on the grid, which I'm pretty sure it won't be that point, just statistically speaking. And I don't know if Perez is really there, really. But anyway, again, saving that for Checo's Corner. The real problem is going to be when Adrian Newey decides he's built enough championship winning cars, and then what will Red Bull do?
Yes, I think that could be a whole. That could be a step change in the team. If I was cynical, that's when they'll sell the team.
However, I do think on like an Adrian Newey retirement note, I have to think that he would be well involved in picking his successor.
Yes, and he did a podcast with the Beyond the Grid, which I keep calling Off the Grid, but he did a talk about that, and he talked about how it's the team itself. They've tried to set it up. It's not that he's not on the critical path, but he is making sure that there is appropriate people with appropriate development opportunities to be on the critical path.
Hats off to Adrian Newey for not having the insane ego that some people have.
Indeed.
Also back on the Checo is Max's teammate for the next 10 years. He didn't specify Formula One, if I remember correctly. So, Max goes to race WEC. He'll need a teammate there. He does V8 supercars in Australia. He'll need a teammate there. So, Checo's just ready to follow Max around the globe for the next 10 years.
Well, it's perfect. Checo can finally get his world championship on the coattails of Max, because Max will drive the car and then he'll hand it off to Checo, and then Max will have to recover for all the mistakes that Checo has made, because it's a team game in WEC.
What's the minimum amount of laps one teammate can do? 1?
I assume so.
Yeah. And then finally, I think Toto Wolff listens to our podcast.
This is the only conclusion we can come from this.
Exactly, because we were lamenting last week that, and previous weeks as well, that Mercedes are absolutely terrible when it comes to pit stops in terms of everybody else on the grid. And Toto came out and said something as much of, we need to fix our pit stops because we are losing a second to the other teams, at least, in the pit stops. There was Code F1 on Twitter, because I refuse to still call it by the other name. They put together a graph of pit stops, and the pit stop time that was less than 2.5 seconds, and that was for this season. Would you like to guess what percentage of Red Bull's pit stops are faster than 2.5 seconds?
85%.
Only 43, actually.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. Surprising.
They are the leaders, by the way. Ferrari?
You said it was 45 for Red Bull?
43.
37.
Ferrari's at 40.
Oh.
McLaren?
37.
35.
Oh, yeah.
Mercedes?
3%?
1.6.
Oh.
Yeah. So of their 59 pit stops this season, they've only done one faster than 2.5 seconds.
Damn. That is shocking, actually.
Right?
Yeah. Did you see the excuse that they've come up for why their pit stops are so bad?
Please do tell, because I think you told me earlier, and I'll let you have the moment.
Apparently, their wheel guns are old, their wheel nuts are weird, and all the other equipment that is involved needs a redesign because they haven't changed it in all these years, because it costs to do that, and they've been managing the cost of developing the car to stay within the cost cap. That's their excuse. So here's the real thing: we have to put a little pin in that, and we have to remember that next year to see whether they've actually fixed the problem or not. They did some good pit stops today, though, so I don't know where that came from.
They did. I don't think they were that fast.
No, they were still not under 2.5, but from on a grading on a curve.
On a Mercedes scale, yeah. Yeah.
So, shall we go on to occasional segment? Does Blank still have a job?
Absolutely. We've got to stick with our three main candidates. And if we want to, we can throw Charles Leclerc's race engineer Javi in there just for today. Of the don't worry, the hards will be faster in 5 laps. The hards were not faster in 5 laps.
He never specified which 5 laps.
I think it meant the next 5 laps.
Well, you never know. It's a Ferrari. So number one on our list of does Blank still have a job? Does Lance still have a job?
Well, he made it further into the race than Fernando before retiring the car.
I like how that was specifically couched as further into the race, not finished ahead of, scored more points than, out-qualified. It was got further into the race.
I think I would believe sooner that Fernando has checked out on the season than Lance is actually now more competitive than Fernando.
I would subscribe to that. In fact, to give Alonso the benefit of the doubt in the most gratifying way, he has learnt from what happened with Mercedes last year, and he is just spending his time focusing on the car for next year. That's what he's spending his mental capacity on.
I would definitely believe that. I think he was trying to do the most predictable, consistent laps possible today to help gather data and that. And we have seen Fernando checked out before. I remember when he was leaving McLaren and he did not have a seat next year in F1 and they were at Abu Dhabi. And, the engineer was giving him the hurry up to like, hey, come on, you can score a point because you're 11th. And he's like, I have so many points, I don't need another one. Like, a point is not going to help the car. And then he proceeded to cut the chicane 3 times in a row. Like, he was gaining so much time because he just cut the chicane because he didn't care. He got a 5-second penalty. It was hilarious.
Like Perez on turn 6 in Austin, but didn't get a penalty for it, though.
Oh, apparently the cameras weren't set up properly to see it.
Really?
Yeah.
Yes, Lance, suspicious, very dodgy. He had a bad race, bad qualifying, and then he had a whole brand new car and then managed to break it towards the end. I still don't understand why he retired at the end. He only spun it like once. He didn't hit a wall, so, but whatever.
Well, because then he could have hit a wall if he kept it out there.
Well, true.
I think that's the hockey equivalent of the sin bin of the you broke the car, there's not enough laps left, you're not in the points, get in before you do any more damage.
Well, yeah, that's a fair point. Fair point. Should we go on to Logan?
Sure. Does he still need to be on the list?
They haven't said he hasn't got the seat, and what's his face from Williams keeps saying he's been doing pretty good, and I feel that's just a PR mechanism. He was pretty close today, but apparently the car went bang on the last lap, and he couldn't even get across the finish line. He came into the pits on the last lap from 12th position, and then finished in 16th. And I feel that sucks because I feel like not even being able to make it the remaining. I suppose it's not really 300 feet to the finish line because you then got to drive around again. But nonetheless, I was like, man, that kind of sucks. But yeah, I feel like he, sadly, it's not so much that he needs to be out of it because he's crap, but I think that's the case. I think there's so many better opportunities for Williams.
I would just say that after reviewing last week's race results post-podcast, Logan Sargent has scored a point in his rookie season at Williams, something George Russell did not do.
Oh, spicy.
Yes.
Spicy.
Because we can always compare Williams across seasons.
I think that's fair at this point.
And then finally, who I think might be the most biggest candidate who might be losing their job at the end of the season, Sergio Perez.
Is this? Yeah, this is Checo's corner, right?
This is Checo's corner at this point in time. Some wonderful stats. There were some great stats on the broadcast today. I think Sky does a very good job. And one of the things they pointed out, and this is very much true, or I don't know if they pointed this out. Somebody pointed this out. I saw this, and I double-checked it. Max has 491 points this season.
Go Max.
Checo is in second place with 240 points. That means the gap from Max to Checo is 251 points. So everybody on the grid is closer to Checo than Checo is to Max.
I find that stat shocking. And I find it shocking because surely people at the back, like Logan Sargent, must be further behind him. Like it's a stat that you listen, you're like, this makes no sense. I can't make head nor tail of it, but yet here we are.
What about somebody who hasn't done a race since Hungary?
Oh, come on.
Nick DeVries has no points, but is still technically closer to Perez in the championships than Perez is to Max.
What happened to Checo this season? Like, what happened?
How about this? Liam Lawson only did 5 races this year, has 2 points. He is closer to Checo than Checo is to Max.
He's closer to Checo's seat than Checo is to Checo's seat.
That might be true.
Yes. The stat is mind-blowing. I just still can't believe that Checo managed to screw up his home race so badly.
We'll call it George Russell syndrome. I think he's trying so hard to push for a result to prove that he belongs in that Red Bull seat that he made the most stupid, asinine lunge into turn 1. And let's hold off on talking about that until we get to the race recap. Should we talk about the quali?
We shall talk about the qualification of our drivers for the excellent race that was this weekend.
It was a bit of a crazy mixed up grid.
And it was, and there was no weather that caused it. There have been some atmospheric issues that caused it, but no weather caused that.
Temperature is weather, Dominic. Temperature is weather.
True. But does that really explain it?
Apparently in Q3, the temperature of the track dropped, and Red Bull were having a hard time getting the car in the operating window.
Oh, I missed that. That's fascinating.
Again, I watched the whole broadcast this morning.
Ah, you heard all the stats.
I heard all the figures. Yes, we had Bernie Collins and Danica Patrick talking to one of the Mercedes engineers, and I have to say I think one of them asked better questions than the other.
It was Bernie, wasn't it?
Well, let me just say this. One asked I am a race engineer strategist questions, and the other asked I am a racing driver questions.
Oh, interesting.
They were both, to be fair, they were both good questions. I wouldn't say one of them had a lot better questions than the other, but one was very much I am a race strategist questions, and the other is I am a racing driver questions.
And in hindsight, I think that's what makes Bernie so good. Most people are not armchair drivers.
Right.
But everybody that watches F1 is effectively an armchair strategist, so she asks more audience-relevant questions.
Yeah.
So should we lead with the highlight of qualification here?
Daniel Ricciardo out-qualifying Sergio Perez. I assume that's the highlight.
Oh, yeah, it was beautiful. Well, even putting that to one side, Danny Rick gets into Q3 with great pace. It's like the first time he's done that since, 2020. I mean, maybe a slight exaggeration, but he did that. He did that with ease. He seemed comfortable in it. It was great. And on top of that, he beat the team that he wants to beat, the teammate of the person he wants to be driving.
I mean, the great thing about Mexico City is your draggy car is a lot less draggy.
Indeed, it turns out that physics does matter.
And that Honda power unit is pretty good.
Well, but...
Red Bull powertrains unit is pretty good.
But Perez had the same one. He should be equally capable.
Well, there's a lot of stuff he should have done this year to be equally capable.
Shoulda, woulda, coulda. Yeah, that was great. I was very happy to watch Danny make it to the end there. That was probably the highlight of qualifying.
There was another good broadcast moment about the altitude of apparently they run the Monaco level wings at Mexico. But the altitude is so high and the air pressure is so less that they produce less downforce than the Monza flat wings.
That needs to be the kind of question that should be on a high school, the SAT type physics paper, because I feel
an AP test.
Yeah, I think that would be spot on, because I feel like it's got all the things and you can give some numbers on it and you can ask what do you think it should be and then do the math and you're like, oh yeah, that's interesting. So yeah, I like that. That's a good one. Yes.
Ferrari did their 1 lap pace thing. They got both cars on the front row. That was impressive.
For the first time in a very long time, right?
Yeah, something like that. And I think the first time ever in Mexico or something like that, or not since 1983 or something.
Yeah. It was great. They were brilliant laps, but they couldn't repeat them, which I also thought was fascinating. Even they think they slapped on new boots and went for it again, and they couldn't repeat that performance. It was clearly just as I think Martin said on the broadcast, right time, right place, right moment.
Absolutely. And if I could put on my tinfoil hat for a minute, the titular name of this, or the titular item of this podcast, I think Max did this on purpose. I think he baited Ferraris into a front row lockout because he knows and proved that P3 is the best place to start in this race.
I could believe that. I'm normally not one to subscribe to drivers intentionally making certain choices, but I think Max has reached that point in the season that I think he's fully able to do that, and I think he probably might have done that.
I have to say, on the walk to the grid this morning, for everybody who is kind of a Max hater and thinks he's like a young hothead and things like that, Max has certainly matured a lot in the last couple of years because on the walk to the grid, it's like, oh, what do you think? P3 is a good spot. Can you overtake and be first into turn one? And he's like, it makes no sense to overtake on turn one or push it really hard into turn one. All you can do is ruin your race. The race is not won on one lap. It's a very long race. There's a lot of attrition. It's going to be a very heavy race, so the goal is to get through the first corner cleanly. I forget who was walking with him, but she was trying to bait him into you're going to go really hard and fast. And he's like, no, it's got to be, it's going to be high deg. It's very hot. It's going to be a very controlled race. Like, you got to approach this as almost an endurance event than like a sprint event, just because of all the factors going today. And it's amazing to see how far we've come from like a Crash Stappen. And I applaud Max for that.
So we often talk about Red Bull having made a decision to design the car to have great race pace. Maybe not the best, one lap pace, but focus on race pace. I think there's an unspoken part of that, right? Which is you have to work with the driver to help them understand what that means. And I think your observation here about Max suggests that they've done a great job of training and building Max up. Part of that is just maturity, and he's won 3 championships at this point, and part of it just comes with that experience. But at the same time, I wonder how much Red Bull was like, look, this is how we're going to do the car. No, it seems like it's a bit weird. Honest, we got this. And that's a really interesting way to think about it. Brilliant insight.
I think it's also a little bit of like the different formulas going from like the previous turbo hybrid formula to these ground effect cars, in the sense of, we know they follow better. We know they do well. We know they do better overtakes. While in the previous generation car, if you had good 1 lap pace and then could keep the car behind you for 3-4 laps, you got it. You have track position is king. Dirty air will ruin all. So you could get away with 1 lap pace, and track position is everything. And if you get in front and you can force somebody to be in the dirty air for 3 laps and ruin their tires, you can ruin their whole day.
That is strategy. That's long play. Not many.
Hannah Schmidt right there.
Long play. Exactly.
Anyway, we should continue talking about qualifying, because the Astons had a terrible day. They do not like the altitude.
No, they do. I'm not sure I'm willing to go with it. They don't like the altitude. I think the car is just screwed. I don't know what they've done to it, but it has just got crap.
It's almost worth bringing the Bahrain car back and seeing how that does.
I think they need to do that. I think in all seriousness, they need to really think about that. Maybe Abu Dhabi is the right place for them to try that. Like, if they plan it and they do it in advance, they should be able to drive both types of car, one in FP1, one in FP2, and just really try and understand what the difference is between that. Because it doesn't make any sense. And if it turns out that everybody else has just improved and like you haven't made your car worse, great. It gives you that insight. But they need that insight, because until you understand what happened, it's not good. But they qualified badly.
I would go, you need to bring the early season car, so the Bahrain, Saudi, Australia car. You need to bring the Netherlands car, the Belgium Netherlands era car, because the Netherlands was the site of Alonso's last podium. He got a second, and then the current car, and run all 3.
Could they do this in the post-season rookie young drivers test? I'm not even being facetious about Alonso being a rookie this time, but like, if they've got a driver that they believe is predictable enough, they could get away with that.
They probably could, because that is more about driver miles than car testing. But I think but that's one of those, if you're going to use Abu Dhabi as a test platform, you run one car one way, one car another way, and the third car another. Like in that test session, do it again.
Yep. Lando's woes.
Yeah, he got a track limits violation, I think, and that kicked him out into Q1.
I thought he had a different problem than that. I thought that was Alex that got that, which is next.
Yeah,
I didn't think Lando got track limited in the same way.
He got yellow flagged. That's right.
Yes, and he just ended up being out of sync. And he said there was nothing wrong with the car. He was just whatever was causing the problem. It was not working for him on Saturday.
So, well, they certainly got it working on Sunday.
Yeah. Alex makes it into Q3, but not really.
That was kind of interesting to me, because like he's adamant that he did not cut that corner, and that leads me to like an interesting corner cutting question, because if you think of like the radius of a corner, because we know we have to have 4 tire, or we have to have at least 1 tire touching the white line at one point in time. Is it a legal corner if essentially the straight line of the car means that like all the wheels will have been out at a certain point in time, but by the time the back wheel goes out, the front wheel's already back in bounce. Is that a legal corner or not? Because I think that's what got Alex.
That's an excellent question, and if we have any scrutineers / race directors who would like to write in and let us know, please do, because I think that is an excellent point. I think that is, I mean, in some ways, that's how the rules should be written, right? If all your wheels go off in the process of transiting through a corner, then you cut the corner. We have some updates from the Twitters after the race. Nothing shocking, but no penalty for Leclerc, because it was agreed by the teams and the FIA last year that front wing detachments and their final resting place are not to be deemed unsafe. I actually have no idea how to read that.
I think that's reasonable.
I still don't know what it means. Anyway, moving on. Back to Alex and his cutting of corners. Yes, that sucks, and it feels bad for him. Shall we move on to the race?
Just quick, back on the corner cutting. Do you think he cut the corner? If that was the case, do you think he cut the corner or not?
I did not watch it to have an opinion.
Okay. Because I think it's one of those, like, I think according to the rules, I don't think he cut the corner. And that's a question that, like, do you need to consider a different rule set?
If that is the way the rules are written, then we should enforce the rules as they are written and take a note that we should follow up for the next season to adjust the rules. I don't think we should be like, actually, the spirit of the rule, especially if so written as being very prescriptive, we should just go and reinterpret it live in real time. We should take the next opportunity to address that.
Yeah, especially it being there's not a lot of pure 90-degree corners like that on the track where you're taking it at that sort of line, or on tracks where you're taking it at that sort of line in a chicane. You know, there's a lot more. Even the tight corners and stuff are usually more sweeping. So it's really a Mexico problem.
One last point upon qualification and track limits and whatnot. It's very quick for the stewards to go make a judgment and say, oh, we can kick you out and get this all done. But waiting and hanging around in the pit lane, we got to wait for 3 hours afterwards to make the decision about that. And I think F1 needs to fix that because it keeps happening, and they need to stop letting people get through the rest of qualifying and then give them a penalty. They should do it and decide that, no, you don't progress to the next session. If that means they've got to increase the gap between sessions by like 5 minutes, then so be it. But they need to do that because it's ridiculous.
So I think we need to move on to the race. And I think before we need to start with the race our race recap, I think we need some statistics. We can be a very statistic and stat heavy podcast this time around.
Yes.
Charles Leclerc in his career has had 22 pole positions now, more than any driver to never win a World Drivers' Championship.
Impressive.
It is. And of those 22 poles, Max has won 10 of those races. Checo has won 4. Charles has won 4, Lewis has won 3, and Sebastian Vettel has won 1. If we just look at the ground effect car era, so 2022 and 2023, Charles has 13 poles, Max has won 8 of those, Checo 3, and Charles 2, and I'm pretty sure those 2 were like the start of last season.
I have one key takeaway from this. This clearly shows how much better Charles Leclerc is than Lewis Hamilton and Sebastian Vettel. It shows that in those situations, he has more wins from poles, right, against each other than anybody else. And that shows that he's got the measure of them. We'll ignore what seasons those may or may not have occurred in, because that's beside the point. But we can see that stat, and this is why Ferrari believes in Charles. That's the only thing we can take away from that.
I mean, doesn't Lewis have like the best pole to win conversion rate of all time?
Probably. But Ferrari have not given Charles the car he deserves. That's what the problem is. This is an absurd stat, and Charles needs to talk to his driver coach and the team about it, because he needs to fix this. This is ridiculous.
It is insanely ridiculous, just like how much a Charles Leclerc pole does not mean Charles is going to win. If anything, Max is going to win. Like, oh, Charles is on pole? Cool, Max Verstappen win. Like, cue up the Dutch national anthem already. Like, it is... Like, Max doesn't even have that. Like, his pole conversion rate, I think, is still pretty good.
Yes.
But it's like, oh, the Red Bull's on pole, cool. Max is probably going to do a good job. The Ferrari's on pole, lol. Max is going to be through by lap 3. Like, it's not even close. It's a meme at this point.
It's Ralph Wiggum being Charles Leclerc, going, I'm in danger of not winning the race. It's ridiculous. He needs to sort that out.
I think also, like, it does prove just like how good that Ferrari is over one lap and how shit it is over the race. And at that point, like, I don't know if this is a race engineer problem or a car design problem. Jump
or even a setup problem.
Sure, but like jumping ahead a little bit, this is like the one time we have never heard Ferrari talk about plan C, D, E, F, M, O. Like, this was the one time it's like, hey, we're still thinking plan A. You go to plan A? Yeah, we're good with plan A. And like, man, if they had held out to the red flag, that would have been really interesting. But they were clearly losing pace. Max was essentially a pit stop ahead, like before they, like, he had the pit stop in hand before Sainz and Charles even pitted. Like, he pitted when the safety car came out. He pitted for new hards, and he's like, cool, we're good. Like, he had it so covered off. He still ended up, Martin Brundle had the comment at the end of the race, like he was 22 or 23 seconds faster than Charles in the second half of the race, and that doesn't even include the gap that like was just wiped out by that red car or that red flag. And I think that gap was like 17 seconds at the time.
It was pretty big. It does raise an interesting question that Ferrari are constantly readjusting their strategy, but I don't think anything happened in this race other than the red flag to cause Ferrari to need to reassess their strategy. For the first time in forever, everybody was roughly where they kind of expected them to be. Nobody kept changing it. Everything was kind of as it was. So they didn't have to enumerate plan A through Z, and they just stuck with it. They did roll out option 1 and option 2, though, just to be clear. That was discussed briefly on the radio.
I slightly disagree.
Okay. Because
you saw Max pitting earlier than people expected, and then being a rocket ship. Lewis pitted earlier than expected and was a rocket ship. And I think on a track that is surprisingly difficult to overtake, in part because of the altitude and due to car cooling, having that rocket ship, it would have been, I think, almost like a George Russell situation where it's like, nah, man, I'm going to push the one stop to work. Because I think we were really looking at a good 2-stop race for like Max and Lewis. And I think, if anything, we kind of did see it, that those hard tires were not working as well towards the end. I mean, we talked about it at the top of the podcast of Javi being like, oh yeah, in 5 laps, we're going to be faster. And they were not faster. They were never faster. And I don't know if it was a car cooling situation or a tire deg situation, but Lewis was alive on those mediums. Max was alive on the hards up the road, and they were just chilling. And
ultimately, yeah. I think what you're saying, to counter my point, is Ferrari should have adjusted their strategy and yet didn't, because they weren't paying enough attention. We assume that they saw that the other things had happened, but this is Ferrari. There's no guarantee that they actually observed anybody else in the race.
Yeah, this was one of those, we didn't even realize what went wrong last weekend, and we were ready to do it again.
Yeah, it's. I think, as we have in the notes here, Ferrari haven't learned their lesson from last week. No, they haven't. They have not learned their lesson.
Meanwhile, back to kind of more of the start of the race, Alonso was fined for speeding in the pit lane on the lap to the grid. We talked about in the last podcast that they have increased the fines up to $1 million. So, Dominic, how much was Fernando Alonso fined for speeding in the pit lane?
$100.
$100,000? That's a lot. No, just 100?
One single $100.
Oof.
A fresh Benjamin.
I hope he can afford that.
Wait, it is Benjamin, right? It's a Benjamin, right?
It is a Benjamin. In this country, it is a Benjamin.
Okay, great.
I assume in England it would just be a King Charles.
I don't think we have £100 notes. Also, on every note in England, I think you'll find on the back, you'll find a member of the royal family, aka the head of state.
£100 note. The £100 note is currently the largest denomination and banknote issued by the Royal Bank of Scotland.
Oh, interestingly, fascinating. Oh, we're not going to go on the divergence of the difference between the Bank of Scotland and the Bank of England and how sometimes you get your Scottish money rejected in English banks. It's very confusing. Anyway, moving on swiftly to...
How many countries are in that country?
Indeed. It's complex and difficult, and I don't wish to get censored by somebody. Do we want to talk... We don't really want to talk about what Perez did, but should we talk about what happened to Perez after the fact?
I want to talk a little about what Perez did.
Okay.
He tried to go 3 wide in turn 1, pinched Charles, and got sent into the runoff area.
And very nearly, that was just a hair's width from accidentally taking out Max. Because if Charles had bounced a little bit more in the other direction, that would have taken out Max. And I feel like that might have actually been the end of Checo's career in Formula One if he'd done that. But luckily,
Just right there.
that would have been the defining moment.
I mean, at least the championship wouldn't have been on the line.
Oh man, yeah. But neither championship would have been on the line. But I still think that would have been like, rule number one: don't take out your teammate.
And then, man, he sat in that car, like, hoping they were going to repair it, like, going 3 and 4 laps down, like, he wanted to get back out there. It was almost like he knows it's his last Mexican Grand Prix and wanted to go drive around.
Yeah, that was.
It felt that way, didn't it?
It did. It did. Did you see the clip, or did you notice the clip where Perez, after he'd clearly gone, had a shower and done his old talking bit, whatever, comes into the garage and nobody would look at him. The entire pit crew was like, "I'm looking at the TV, and you're standing right in front of the TV," and this blank look of panic on Perez's face as he tries to get out of the way. It was pretty shocking. It was like chef kiss perfect of like the relationship that he has with the team. Yeah, it sucks for him. It really was. It was pretty damning.
That sucks.
Yeah. Also, speaking of Perez out of the car, he did an interview, or I heard the replay of the interview during the red flag, and he uttered the words, which seemed surprisingly out of context. I have no doubt that I'll be back for Sao Paulo. Now, I'm sure that he is referring to, I'm going to be back to top form by Sao Paulo, and I'm like, I feel like that's clearly a porky pie, because you've said that for like the last 10 races. But there's just the way it came out, just the tone, the intonation. I'm like, does he know something? Is he putting an idea into the universe that Danny Rick will be in the Red Bull by next week?
I don't. If anything, Danny Rick's in by Vegas just for the memes. But
True.
But man, I don't see him getting replaced like at this point in time. Because if there was a championship threat, I think you could see it. But it's one of those situations of like, nah, we'll give you the chance to outpace Lewis, who's now 20 points behind, and if not DQ'd last week, like what, 5 points behind, or a lot closer.
But if you're the team and you've made the decision that like really he's out for 2024, right? Why don't you take advantage of basically free running for the remaining 3 races of the season?
Yeah,
just 3 races, and throw in whoever his replacement is, and you get them. You get 3. You get FP1.
Danny gets 1. Danny gets 1, Yuki gets 1, Liam gets 1.
Bake off. I love it. Yes. Red Bull, please do this.
Yeah. We'll give Danny Vegas. We'll put Yuki in Sao Paulo, and we'll do Liam in Abu Dhabi. Just everybody gets a go.
Perfect. Wham bam, thank you, man.
Yeah. Did you see the Christian Horner Checo conversation on the pit wall?
I did, and I do want to know what was said. I liked your interpretation that you texted me, so I think you should share it with the class.
I should remember what I texted you. Oh, yeah. I said, this is why you're done, mate. Pack your bags and go.
Yeah, perfect. It's the only possible explanation that was what was said. It was nothing. It was never camaraderie or support or saying it's okay. It was just making sure he got straight in there.
It does feel a little bit like Christian Horner might not be the best team principal dad for Checo.
No, I think he is a reasonable pit lane dad, but team principal dad, but not for Checo.
He's the team principal stepdad for Checo. Of like, look, man, we try to get along, but
it ain't working.
I'm with your mom now, and you need to go somewhere else. Yeah, For Checo, it's team principal stepdad vibes.
I agree. Okay. Charles escapes his black and white flag, which was surprising in the race, but given the previously aforementioned note that I had added earlier, he even escaped it post-race, which I think was fascinating, and I still don't understand that rule.
I'm not even sure the stewards always understand the rules, but that's another podcast
Indeed.
For another time.
Indeed.
Danny was hustling that Alpha. He was trying.
He really was trying, and I am so happy to see that he was actually trying. I really hope this isn't like a Monza 2-point situation where he just peaks and that's it for the rest of the season. I'm hoping pleading pine and yearning.
He was, he put up, I think, as good of a fight as he could have with Lando coming through. It was a bit of almost a Danny of old. And I wish they hadn't cut away with his battle with George on the last lap, because I know we have to see Max win his 16th race of the season and set a new record and all that. But like, come on, that was some good action that had been brewing. And I think one more lap, Danny would have got him for sure. And
it was so close. And I looked at those little timing things go up and down, and we didn't say the right thing. In a brief note, before we started this podcast, well, I did review it, and it wasn't as exciting maybe as we hoped.
Yeah, but it was still like, yeah, those two going at it. It would have been good.
Yeah, so good that the second Mercedes driver is driving down all the way at the back and being about to be overtaken by an AlphaTauri. Oh, yeah, that's a good fight. I like that.
Should we vent about George? We haven't vented about George yet this podcast.
No. Well, maybe we'll leave that for a little bit. I have a late breaking spicy take rumor, as you mentioned that, so we'll save it for that section.
All right, cool. Yeah, we talked about Ferrari. The red flag was kind of interesting, but kind of not.
Yeah, it mixed it up, but it didn't mix it up. It was basically two sprint races. And actually, I think that when you think about what a sprint race is, I think that actually kind of works for a sprint race and more racing. It's just maybe if you could split it up across the 2 days. I don't know.
I liked Mercedes going bold and put Lewis on the mediums.
Yes.
That worked out very well. I thought Lewis might be first into turn 2 because, he was starting from P3, but Max got a good launch and definitely knew how to cover that one off.
Yeah, and also I thought it was impressive that Lewis had learned his lesson from Qatar and decided that maybe he shouldn't turn in on people. So good work, Lewis.
And boy, Lando had a bad start in the second start. That was terrible.
Great racing for him at the end. I think it was but I'm still he shouldn't have screwed up twice.
Yeah.
It was a good race, but it's unclear exactly what happened and why it was good. But it was good. I enjoyed it.
I did also enjoy it. I have told this to you off podcast many a time, and I think now that we have a wider audience of amount of people, I think it's worth repeating. I love the things that Mexico does with the Mexican Grand Prix. I love the mariachi band interpretation of the Formula One theme. I love all the art around the circuit. I love that they put their own flair on the podium celebration. I want to see more countries do something like that, of showcase your local culture within the realms of Formula One, because I think it is great because we have a world championship. And if it's the same commercialized, sterile view every week of here's our same theme, here's the same artwork and everything else, it looks a bit old. And I love seeing countries put their own flair on what it is. And it's always very cool to rock out to Mexico, hear that version of the theme. The stadium section is always rocking. The cool things they've done with the car podiums. It's very, very cool.
It's interesting to think about most Formula One venues, and there's one that pops to mind that kind of embraces this, but it hasn't quite got there yet. Most of the time, that cultural expression is external to the race. It's never into the race, and I think that's what Mexico does pretty good, is it brings it into the race, and I think that is the way it should be.
Right, because for viewers at home, I get to see that, and it makes me want to go watch the Mexican Grand Prix in person more than any other thing.
Yes. The only other race that seems to come even close to this is Miami, strangely.
I would agree with that. Miami definitely has some of that, but that's the thing of there's definitely a South Beach vibe, and Miami tries to get it going.
Yep. They need to stretch that out to the podium and the music, and I don't know what you do, but I feel like there's an opportunity there.
All right, do you not like the football helmets in the stadium?
Do we see those in the race?
In Miami?
Yeah, but do we see them?
No.
I don't remember seeing them.
During the podium celebration.
Oh, did they get them? I missed that.
They did one year where they wore football helmets and stuff, and it was
only had 2 years. Anyway, should we get spicy and have some hot takes and some rumors?
Sure. I have one, and I think that Daniel is going to drive the Red Bull in 2024 at this rate, and I think Checo is going to be given the choice between you can either get in the Alpha or you can try your luck on the open market. Because we know he has a clause in his contract that says he cannot be dropped into the AlphaTauri. But I think they can say, you can take it if you want, or you can try your luck on the open market, but you will not be in this car for 2024.
My response to that is he won't take it, subsequently fails to get a drive. Liam gets the AlphaTauri seat, and Checo becomes a sports commentator.
What would he commentate on?
Formula One.
Oh, okay. Would he be part of the Sky broadcast, or?
No, I think he'd probably commentate on in Mexico.
Okay.
But I suppose the real question at that point is, after you've lost the driver of your country, is it that popular in Mexico anymore? I don't know.
That's a good question. I would hope so, because I think they put on a very good show.
They do. Second spicy take and rumor this week is this was written mid-race, so maybe I'm a little bit wrong here, but Lando is actually the second driver at McLaren, and that Piastri is the number one driver.
I mean, they did ask the number one driver in that case to let the number two driver through.
Well, no, but he had a different strategy, more pace, like they've done that to Lewis. It's, same things happen all the time. To put it in a slightly different way, it feels at the moment the performance that Piastri is showing, he may have a higher ceiling than Lando. I think is maybe one way for me to interpret this, but we'll see. We'll see next year. I think if the car's good, the real test.
If they can figure out how to bring a good car to Bahrain, which has been their weakness for the last 4 seasons.
Indeed.
Did you see Lando's comment of if he ever wins a race, he's just going to retire on the spot?
I did. And I can't help but feel I have this whole theory about you don't put ideas into the universe that you don't want to happen, and he's put an idea into the universe. I hope it doesn't happen, but got to be careful about this. I
mean, I think it depends when that race comes. If he still has this duck on him in 5 years, I can definitely see it's fine, I won, I'm out. I could see it where he realizes he's never going to be a world champion or something like that. As long as he doesn't win the first race of the season,
he could easily be world champion without ever having won a race. It has happened before.
If anybody can do it, Lando could do it.
Indeed.
Somebody's been world champion without winning a race
in a season. Certainly.
Yes.
Keke Rosberg, I believe.
Of course, the Rosbergs would both have that weird stat.
What's Nico Rosberg's weird stat?
Well, just the one he did with the one race where he won his one championship and then retired.
Oh yeah.
Complete Formula One World Championships results. No, he did win a race that season.
Oh, he did.
He did.
Oh, that was somebody
he
else.
Won the Swiss Grand Prix.
I swear there was somebody who became champion and they never won a race that season. Anyway.
Has anyone...
Wait, did you say Swiss?
Yes, I said Swiss. The 1982 Swiss Grand Prix.
I thought the Swiss didn't like speed.
They don't. That also struck me as odd. But anyway, has anybody ever won the Formula One title not winning a race? Has any driver won the World Championship without winning a race? Mike Hawthorne and Keke Rosberg won the title with just one singular win.
Oh, well,
so 2 people have done it with 1 win. So only Lando Norris could do it with no wins. I feel like in order for that to happen, we would have to bring back 1980s and 70s level attrition.
Yes, I think that's true. But 2026 is coming up. Who knows what's going to happen?
Yeah, but they want to be more sustainable and stuff. And while I do miss seeing engines go kabang, I feel like we are unlikely to have a lot of that.
They say sustainable for the environment. It doesn't mean sustainable on the racetrack.
Yeah, and if you're constantly blowing up engines, that's not the most sustainable thing.
Well, as long as they can be fixed and you don't spray bits everywhere and pollute everything, it's totally plausible. Anyway, so
they just need to make the whole engine out of those takeout those compostable takeout containers.
Yes, there we go. That's exactly it. That's sustainable. So my late breaking spicy hot take rumor is George will not get renewed at the end of his contract.
Ooh. Well, tune in for tinfoil helmets in 2025 to learn the truth on that one.
Based on his current performance, I don't know. He has to fix his overdriving problem because it's hurting him.
I think the real problem there is I don't think Lewis is going to want to go another 3 years. Maybe he will. I don't know. But I could see Lewis also being kind of done with it. And I don't think Mercedes want to put 2 rookie drivers in that car.
That's where they get Lando.
Well, rookie to Mercedes.
I think if at that point they may be willing to have that. I could see them getting to that point.
That would be very interesting.
Anyway, should we go for our wrap-up and crazy but plausible predictions for Brazil?
Absolutely.
So the first one here is, and I must have missed these, more Felipe Massa comments. Oh, I see what you're saying. My brain has finally caught up. Yes, I co-sign this. There will be more Felipe Massa comments about 2008 at the Brazilian Grand Prix, especially if he's allowed to do the podium interviews. Please don't let him do the podium interviews. He's just bad at it.
Can you imagine if he gets to do the podium interviews and gets to and Lewis gets on the podium?
Don't make this happen.
Lewis, do you think your championship in 2008 is valid?
Yes.
Yeah, that's the only answer.
What if it's Alonso on the podium and he gets to do the interview?
Wait, no. No. I got it. The first question from Felipe is, Lewis, do you think Max's 2021 championship is valid? See what he says there. And then if he says no, followed up with, do you think your 2008 championship is valid?
Oh, that's spicy. And I can see him actually trying to pull that off. No, it does not have that.
Yeah, I think as soon as he starts to ask that question, his mic is suddenly not working. And David Coulthard appears.
Yes, I can believe that happens. He just apparates magically. Second one, I think George is going to win at Brazil again because that would just be the cruelest, horriblest, most thing to happen in the world.
If by win you mean first out of the race because he's overdriving the car into the first chicane and takes somebody and himself out, I will agree to that.
Oh, but it's a Merc track, and he did so well last year.
No, I think if it is a Merc track, I think Lewis is going to win because George is just overdriving the car, and Lewis loves Brazil.
I would love him if he's going to win it. If he's going to win a race, I'd love it to be Brazil because I think that would just be like it would jazz the Brazilian people, super jazzy. Here's the other question: we're going to see Shakira in the garage. Let's find out.
Are he and Shakira still? I thought they.
No, I think she was dating somebody else, but you never know. So we're waiting for your feedback. Write into feedback@Tinfoil Helmets and let us know your conspiracies, feedback, and wants. Also tell your friends to listen, like, rate, and subscribe to the most amazing podcast in F1. And don't forget, you can follow us on Threads and the Instas at Tinfoil Helmets. See you next week.
Did you know I actually got a text message from a friend about this podcast?
You did?
I did.
You did?
They totally agreed with us on the pit stops and at Mercedes, and they're just too slow.
Are you friends with Toto Wolff?
Yes. And with that, I guess we're done. To quote Dominic. Is that the outro now?